Hello, distinguished viewers, and welcome back to part 2 of the Osomatsu review. I'm going to go ahead and call it the review of the franchise. So, this one is going to talk a little bit more about the wiki. If you aren't already familiar, there's a thing called fan.wiki, whatever. Despite my qualms with how the wiki is written, it is very informative in the long run. And it explains that Osomatsu has had the manga running from 1965 up to, I don't really know when because I lost track of that information, but from 1965 there have been 3 mainstay series and a lot of cameos. And among these cameos there has been some queer content happening amongst the sextuplets. There has been the time where I guess a character that was suspected to be Totomatsu, because I should mention that in not every appearance are the Matsunos specifically named. It is, I will even go so far as to say it is oftentimes assumed to be them, but a lot of these works are created by Fujio, so it is way easily to assumed to be them. Even though they may or may not be specifically named. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Back to the sentence. Where Totomatsu gets into the queer community and becomes a drag queen, and Charamatsu walks up to the first guy that says, hey, I want to make out with a dude, and Charamatsu makes out with this dude and then goes with this dude and like leaves his brothers for whatever they're doing. So I don't understand where 2015 went so wrong and fell so short when it is shown that the brothers are obviously opened up to being queer. But for the attitude that they had towards women, in a way it would make sense for the toxic heteronormativity and this super fake sense of toxic masculinity to be in line with that attitude of like, bam, heterosexual cisgender. But it also doesn't make sense that that is also everyone in the world around them. And it really didn't take long for me to figure out that, hey, this seems like way more of an epidemic than a sexual orientation and gender identity. Everyone here is heterosexual and cisgender. And the Valentine's Day episode, which I may have talked about before, is the mainstay of the problematicness that is the Osomatsu-san part of the franchise. But the first problem that I had was Ayami's dating service, where they use pills to magically and perfectly transition into women. Full-fledged female women, which in the United States and some other countries that are more socially aware could easily be taken as a very misguided representation of transgender prostitutes and sex workers. But that's not nearly as bad as what happened in the Valentine's Day episode, because we can all look at it and be like, yeah, a very serious subject in some countries was played for laughs, and I honestly don't know how serious that type of subject is in Japan, but given the way that Japan treats transgender people, it is very highly problematic that when in the few moments that trans people are represented in some type of way, they're represented like that. But the Valentine's Day episode is where the real, actual misogyny was. Of course, it was also played for laughs. But if you look at the Valentine's Day episode and you know anything about nice guys and incels, it's very clear that, hey, we're doing this and playing this for laughs, but really, we're showing you the perspective of how people get from point A to point B, and these are the types of people that this usually happens to. And when violent outcomes do happen, which is a very real-world consequence, this is how they get there, and this is what it looks like. Of course, it's an anime, nobody really got hurt, but in real life, as we've seen in the United States, people do get hurt. So I feel like the Osomatsu franchise as a whole, based on what I've seen, still continues to do a good job on real life commentary, even though it is very out there. But it is going to be framed through the lens of a culture that does not do well with acknowledging mental health issues. And from what I've seen from 1988, I guess the 80s were just a more progressive time for Japanese culture, in a sense. There are still some problematic elements, like the one queer character that is very, like, overtly queer is, first of all, a police officer, which is more of a problem for us than it is them. Second of all, this person is a violent police officer, always waving around a gun, even though they don't really have guns in Japan. I don't know. The fascination with Japan and guns is a different story for a different time. And also has a doll that he takes care of as a living being, and even goes so far to attempt things like breastfeeding, which can be taken very easily as a sign of some sort of mental health issue, some sort of disassociative thing. At the same time, this is the 80s, so cross-dressing is a thing that is thrown about, and it's really not something that we can just look at and say that's played for laughs. Like, within the first 10 episodes, I think it was episode 3, where Osomatsu and Chibita are in tutus. Ayami has on a masculine described ballerina outfit with, like, the sash, but they have on tights and tutus, and it's super cute. And for that to be the third episode, for me as a queer person, really frames where we're going from here. And sure enough, there is a lot of cross-dressing and very arguably, maybe even objective or subjective, depending on how you want to look at it, queer content. They're just really not shy very often. But hell, I laughed. I have some favorites for sure. And I feel like way more comfortable and relaxed with the 1998 series than I do with the 2015 series. Even though I feel like what they did in 2015 was way more comprehensive, for reasons that I've mentioned before about how they make character designs specific to when it's like side story. We are changing the designs. This is specifically this. Whereas in Osomatsu-kun, everything seems to be thrown together because they don't change the names or the designs that much and stuff like that, and it can just kind of mash together and be really weird in a very uncomfortable, non-comprehensive way. But if you're into it, I suggest looking at the wiki because it has a lot of interesting facts that you might find relevant to the rest of the series, even though it is very unnecessarily cynically written to the author's perspective of whatever. And if you haven't watched Osomatsu-kun 1988, like, what are you doing? Just go watch it now. And with that being said, this video is going to come to a close, and there will be a part 3. Hopefully, after this. I'm on episode 60 now. So I'm almost done, and after that I'm going to do another review and then try to track down more of the original Osomatsu-kun from 1966. Thank you for watching. Take care.